Am I correct in saying that this was the best Thursday night football game we've ever had?
I don't know ever, just because I can't recall all the Thursday night football games because I try to burn them all from my memory.
Exactly.
But no, this one was it was phenomenal, right? It was back and forth. It was two exciting teams. It was teams that certainly both have playoff aspirations, and it was really damn good quarterback play, right? I think that it's been up and down for the Seahawks. There's been some criticism of Geno Smith over the course of this season, but man, he showed up in a big way, and the way that Geno Smith played last night, he deserved, I guess I'll use that word even though it's a loaded word, deserved to win that football game with all the huge throws that he had, how pinpoint accurate he was when his back was against the wall, third down pressure. I mean, that dude was absolutely lacing the football all over the field in such a fantastic manner. The only problem is he was going up against the hottest quarterback that we have in the NFL right now, and a guy who probably does not get enough love in the MVP conversation. I looked this up with Dak Prescott. Since week 6, he is far and away the highest graded quarterback that we have in the NFL. He's got a 95 passing grade in our system, and it's like 22 big time throws. It's like 2 turnover worthy plays, and even beyond some of the numbers and the data, he passes the eye test with flying colors. I mean, the confidence that this guy has in the pocket is unmatched right now. You're watching him. He is so light on his feet. His hips are pointing. It's funny because everybody kind of poked fun at him when he was going through his pregame hip drills, like the one that went viral where he's just like trying to, thrust to his butt. But he's doing that in the pocket. And because of it, he's staying so light and flexible, and there's so much power and there's so much accuracy and rhythm on all of his passes. Whether it's first down, second down, third down, whatever it was, Prescott was up to the challenge. I would argue that there is not a more confident quarterback right now than Dak Prescott and what we have seen from this Dallas Cowboys offense. And we saw it on display, and they put up 40 points last night against the Seahawks because of it.
Yeah, he's playing spectacularly right now. The offense is cooking. I think this was a really big game for the team overall, for his MVP candidacy, for their sort of reputation, because this was the game that was different to all the other ones, right? Every other game they've had at home was against a bad team. They've got out to a lead early, and they've just run away with it. This one is a pretty good team who smacked them in the mouth first, right? Like the Seahawks got out to the early lead. Dallas had to stay in it from their point of view. Dallas elected to take the ball rather than defer the way everybody does, at the start of games now. They elected to take the ball, which gave the Seahawks that opportunity, which is why you defer, of getting the touchdown or getting a score before and after the half. And they did. So Dallas had to live with this Seahawks team essentially putting them in spots that they had never been in this season, and literally never been in. This was the first time they trailed at home this year.
I mean, that's impressive just to say, but also impressive, for them to get over it. And I think that, the way that Dak is playing, to me, is trickling to the rest of the roster, and you're just seeing so much confidence from everybody. And, like CeeDee Lamb believes he's the best wide receiver in the world right now. Deron Bland certainly seems like he thinks he's going to get a touchdown every single week. Micah Parsons believes he can get by any offensive lineman that's standing in front of him. So the Cowboys are just playing so confidently right now, and you can tell they're getting the best out of their most talented players, and it allows you to continue to believe. And I think you're right. That was a really important part of what we saw from Dallas last night, is this a team that can kind of roll with the punches? Because it felt like the schedule has been pretty soft to this point. I think they flashed up the strength of schedule, and the Cowboys have one of the easiest strength of schedules, if I'm remembering that correctly from the broadcast last night. But you get into a situation where you've got to be able to win games like this, and this can be a springboard. I guess that's the theme of this podcast, of having something start strong and get you into something that's greater. You go down the rest of the regular season schedule, and you're going to get into the postseason, and you're going to be in dogfights like this. And I think unfairly, the narrative with Dak Prescott has been, yeah, sure, he has a handful of games where he stuffs the stat sheet and he has some really great throws, but he can't beat the big opponents. You can get, like that Eagles game that happened earlier this year, right? I mean, they were close. That game was close, but Philly ends up winning, and it's not a big victory that Dallas gets to take away. And I feel as though we have the best chance that we've ever had, which is saying something, for Dak to be able to correctly show people how good how good he is, and how good this Cowboys offense is.
And I think it was a step in they're in a weird situation, Dallas, because they've been absolutely annihilating bad teams, and then the 49ers embarrassed them and they lost to the Eagles, and those are the two that they sort of need to bridge the gap to. This was a stepping stone in that direction, right? This was the Seahawks aren't as good as the 49ers or the Eagles, but they're on the way. They're on that pathway. And now the next game Dallas has is against the Eagles. The next game after that is at Buffalo, and then at Miami, and then Detroit and Washington. So their schedule gets harder. And if they do legitimately want to be, one of the class of the NFC, a team that's going to the Super Bowl, they need to find a way of crossing that chasm that they've between the teams they're able to destroy and the teams that have been beating them regularly in the last year or so. And I think this is an important stepping stone on that pathway, right? A way of bridging that gap is to go up against a good team who gave you several pretty big punches and then be able to rebound and get the win at the end of it anyway.
Yeah, and I think that this could have been a game, and I'm not going to say they're about to, roll off 4 straight wins against the Dolphins, the Eagles, the Lions. I mean, they could fare well against that schedule, and they certainly have the ability to do that. But this game against Seattle could have been a overlooked game for them, right? They look further on their schedule, and this is a team that firmly has the Philadelphia Eagles in their sights, right? You play them close. They're the class of the NFC right now. They went to the Super Bowl last year. They're the number 1 overall seed right now. And so it would have been realistic and even maybe in some ways understandable for them to look past this Thursday night football off game with the Seahawks, and their focus could have been on Philadelphia and the teams that kind of follow in that schedule. And it wasn't. And I think that they took care of business, appropriately so. And all the best teams in the NFL, even the ones that are putting up crazy points and know that they're going to win every single week, they'll tell you that, yeah, you got to be able to respect the opponent that you have every single week. And it's the ones that lose sight of that pick up a couple of extra losses throughout the regular season and then maybe aren't the team that they're supposed to be once you get to the postseason. And I feel as though Dallas is in a really healthy place when it comes to having this little run of playoff caliber teams that they're about to go up against and giving people a reason to believe that they're not only going to fare well against them, but perhaps even best some of these teams.
It seems strange to say this given the score at the end of the game, but it was a game where it felt like there was actually some pretty good defense being played as well. It wasn't just, one of those games where there's a ton of points, it's all offense, there's bad defense left, right, and center. There was actually some good performances on defense and some interesting plays and key defensive plays that made the difference. Our guy, Ben Stockwell, said to me that it felt like a game where both offenses sort of knew the rules to the opposing defense, which makes sense given the coaching connections, but that meant that the defensive coordinators, the play callers, were going like deep into the bag to find things that were still going to work because the opposing team, knew how to beat the sort of standard stuff that we call. So consequently, you had this really interesting game of like defensive play calls and what was getting dialed up. And ultimately, you can argue like there was a couple of big plays late in the game from Dallas's defense that end up being the difference, right? They get a stuff on 4th and short or 4th and 1, whatever it was, when they try to run Charbonnet. And then obviously that final play, 4th and 2, where Micah Parsons is just in the backfield ruining the play, and that's game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was watching, I agree with you. I didn't come away with that one thinking, man, we're watching 2 really bad defenses. I thought we were just watching a game where the phrase perfect offense is going to beat perfect defense kind of came to life in a handful of ways for both teams. And I go back to just how well both of those quarterbacks were playing. I mean, Geno had 3 or 4 throws that I can remember off the top of my head where he's fading away, back foot, sideline, just in the basket straight over the defender where only his guy could get it. And whether it was Metcalf, who had a huge game, Lockett had a couple of big catches, Jackson Smith and Jigba did as well. And so it was like, no matter who he was throwing to, shoot, that dime to Noah Fant was crazy. That might have been my favorite catch of the night, the way that he was able to go full extension and turn the body and still land with his back to the ground. So he didn't, get any question whatsoever, whether or not he was going to have the ball or whether he was in control of that ball. I mean, that was incredible too. So to me, I agree with you. I didn't think that it was, there were obviously some defensive penalties that held teams back that they're going to want back, but that's kind of just playing the game. No coach is going to accept penalties, but as somebody who's watching, you kind of understand that's what it's going to take, especially when you're going up against really good receivers like the Seahawks have, like the Cowboys have. It's just going to get handsy. It's going to get physical, and you're probably going to have a couple of flags here and there. So I don't even look at that and say, yeah, it was like egregious, it was crazy. I didn't feel that way. I just felt like they were doing whatever they could to try to slow down these offenses. And when both of these teams, and particularly both of these quarterbacks, were operating at that kind of a level, you're going to see more flags because it's going to get more frustrating. You're going to have to go, well, what the hell am I supposed to do to stop this? And you start towing that line a little bit more, and maybe that causes a couple more penalties. But to me, it wasn't that I thought that these defenses played poorly despite 41 and 35 points being given up. It was the fact that both these quarterbacks were just pretty much unstoppable last night.
I felt like a lot of those penalties were pretty ticky-tack as well. Like I thought the officials were erring on the side of, overly officious as opposed to letting them play a little bit, which was the only real bad part of the game to me. Like if the officials had taken a step back, just backed off a little bit, I thought that game would have been even better if they just hadn't called quite so many penalties. The last thing I think we should talk about in the game, the Deron Bland performance was fascinating. He was getting blowtorched in the first half of that game. He overall, he's going to end up with a coverage grade in the 40s, giving up 8 catches for 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 first downs. But he had a spectacular interception, which is a fantastic play. There were multiple plays where he was sort of reading the route and running it for the receiver. Like he beat Tyler Lockett to that play by essentially running the route before Lockett could and getting there ahead of him. So it was a fascinating performance to me for a guy who has been, on this record-setting pace, still has a PFF coverage grade above 90 for the season, even including this game now. But in this one game was sort of trying to give it all away early in the game.
Yeah, I just looked it up really quick. First half, he had a coverage grade of 34.2. And second half, he had a coverage grade of 63.7. So it was a microcosm of what playing the position is all about. And honestly, shout out and salute to Deron Bland for being able to play it this way. You're going to get beat playing corner. That's just the way that it is. When we talk about scouting and things that you love about corners, a reason why I had Devon Witherspoon as my top corner last year. Devon Witherspoon, the second that he steps on the field, he believes that he is the baddest dude in the stadium. Like he believes that he's the most talented football player in the county, in the state, in the country. Every time he steps onto a football field and laces them up, you have to have that mentality to play corner because you know that there's going to be moments where that is not the case, where somebody's going to catch a great pass against you. He's going to moss you. He's going to beat you with a great route. And you have to be able, the very next play, to go, I don't care. I'm going to get the next one. Doesn't matter. And playing corner, if you don't have that bounce back mentality and that overabundance of confidence to allow you to think that way, even when Metcalf is taking one to the house on you and then he beats you for another touchdown. And then who was it? Was it Cooks? Who had the touchdown against? No.
Tolbert,
I had that wrong. Who had the touchdown against Bland that got called back? Like there was another one that got he got beat for the touchdown and then it got called back on him. So there was even a touchdown that he gave up that didn't even show up on the scoreboard. And yet he's able to come back in the second half, continue to play lockdown, continue to play confident, go get an interception. You mentioned sometimes run the routes even better than the receivers are running them themselves. And to me, that's a sign of a great corner. You don't want to be somebody who's so feast or famine like what we saw a couple of years ago with Trayvon Diggs, right? When he was breaking out initially, he was getting all these interceptions, but the variance of how boom or bust he was, it was like, man, okay, you're simply not going to get enough interceptions or forced incompletions to make up for how many yards and how many touchdowns you are giving up. Now he is a much more controlled corner with some of with those ball skills still there. And Deron Bland, to me, is kind of in that same light where right now it's very high variance, but to me, you will certainly take that given how good he is at the takeaway mentality, because you're hoping, hey, next year, the year after that, he's only going to be a more steady and lockdown player where he'll still have those ball skills to him, where those opportunities present themselves, he can go and get it. So, yeah, shout out to him. Unbelievable game. Love the bounce back mentality. And that was one of my takeaways as well. At the end of the game, I was like, damn, that's what corner. Well, I don't want to say that's what corner is all about, because some guys can just have a very quiet night, and that's what you want too. But being able to have that bounce back confidence is such a key part in sticking around this league for a long time at that position.
Yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba had that touchdown just before halftime that ends up getting overturned and becomes a pass interference penalty instead, but could easily have been the third touchdown against him in that game. Another player I want to give credit to for a bounce-back performance was Reek Woolen, who got kind of sat down with a shoulder injury in the last game. He had a great game, a couple of forced incompletions here.